Teachers, what's the worst thing a kid brought for show and tell? Someone brought their pet bat dead in a box that was going to be buried. When they got home later that day, "You sold my dead bird to the blind kid." Blind kid, I just thought he was a little quiet. In my school, some kid brought in his collection of laundry rocks, which were crumpled up pieces of paper that he put in his pockets, and when his mom did the laundry they would turn hard like rocks. He said he did it by accident once, liked it, and started deliberately putting crumpled paper in his pockets to make more. I imagine a lot of kids in your class made their own laundry rocks after that, lol. Yeah, I can see this being really appealing to kids after being introduced like this. Only been teaching for 1 year, but so far, mom's only set of car keys. This is the only one that's actually made me burst out laughing. How long did it take for the mum to realize? And how long did it take her to bike to the school? The teacher across the hall from me had a student who brought what he thought was a lucky rabbit foot to show to the class and excitedly announced he had enough for everyone in the class. The rabbit foot was a tampon. This is hilarious. I like to think he saw the whole box of tampons and was like, wow, I'm gonna be so lucky. He was wearing one tied to his belt loop. I forgot about that part. In the 3rd grade, a girl brought her mom's kidney stones in a pill bottle. WTF, my friend Travis did this in 2nd grade. My brother found a scorpion at our house and captured it to bring for show and tell. The scorpion got out somehow, and the teacher had everyone on high alert to look for it and capture it. Several children returned to the teacher having found the scorpion. That was the day we found out our school was infested with scorpions. I'm thinking this had to be Arizona or Australia. Asked my students to bring an object they loved. One kid brought his grandmother. That's just adorable. Plot twist, she was in a vase. I'm a preschool teacher in a state with legal weed. One of my students brought in a plastic tube the local dispensary uses for old joints. He said he found it in his parents' room and he brought it because he liked the popping sound it made when he opened it. In his defense, it does make a satisfying popping noise. A nice popping noise and a joint. What else could you want? Not a teacher, but when I was in 5th grade my friend brought a metal hip replacement piece from a human body. A human body that her father had cremated and kept. It was for a what would you like to be when you grow up sort of show and tell. She wanted to be a mortician like her dad. What's worse is that she allowed for this piece to be passed around the class before telling everyone, including the teacher, what it was. Chaos ensued afterwards. That's hilarious and awesome, haha. My dad is a physical therapist and has the knee replacement hardware from a patient that had several. He had to dissolve the bone/cement off of it from when he got it. I work at a hospital and there's this weird dude down the hall that stirs his coffee with some sort of piece from his knee replacement surgery, lol. Not a teacher, but one of the kids in my class brought a remote control helicopter to class and flew it around. It was super cool until he accidentally got the blades wrapped around a girl's hair. I think the nurse spent an hour getting it out. Ice won't get that stuff out. Gum gets out helicopters, and peanut butter gets out gum. Mayo gets out peanut butter, and that's the last step. When I was a newborn baby my sister convinced my mom to bring me to her 3rd grade show and tell, and I buffed all over her. My brother made my mom bring me for show and tell after I was born. He then proceeded to tell the entire class that he helped her dig me up from a cabbage patch. The kids all believed him, and the teacher was supposedly trying her hardest to not break out in hysterical laughter. Yes, I'm a 53 years old cabbage patch kid. That's actually the cutest thing ever. Went to school in a tiny town within eastern Colorado. Kid in my class drove his dad's combine to school for show and tell. Was in the 4th grade. Still find it crazy that nobody really cared that there was this big ass piece of farm equipment sitting on the front lawn all day. Was he held back? Or is 10 old enough to drive in co? In many rural areas big enough to reach the pedals is big enough to operate farm equipment. I was 8Y.0 when I started hauling hay wagons back and forth from farm to field. My best friend in grade school brought a huge hunting knife one day. He missed a week of school and my parents didn't let me hang out with him anymore after that. He ended up becoming a nump in MLB and always gave out tickets to his buddies. Thanks mom and dad. I like free tickets too. Maybe because I grew up in the South and around folks hunting, but I don't see why your parents wouldn't let you hang out with him anymore for this. A hunting knife doesn't mean he's trouble. Feel like they went home and when my buddy brought a huge knife to school, as kids do, and that's different than just a hunting knife for show and tell. My wife is a teacher in a major US city. One of her grade 4 students brought in a packet of his mom's cocaine to show the class during Drug Awareness Week. He got some visits from the principals and school counselor, maybe the men in blue, and the teachers get a great end of year party. Teachers party harder than coke. They have special teacher drugs they get high on. I brought 2 knives. My dad is from a region in France where they make famous knives, l'aiguillole, and I own 2 of them, one made of horn and one was bright orange. It didn't cross my mind it could be a problem, but they called my parents, who weren't mad at me. My dad tells a story about when he brought his dad's bird hunting shotgun and ammo to school for show and tell. It was rather uneventful. My grandpa walked out to the bus with him and told the bus driver that he was taking it in for show and tell. Dad got to school, put the gun in his locker, and went and got it when it was time for show and tell. He put it back in his locker after the presentation, then took it home on the bus. Very different times. My dad brought a rifle to the police station about 15 years ago. Mayo. Canadian guns laws are a joke and are not well documented. Well, my family own an illegal gun under a grandfather clause. We have the right to keep it. While on the phone with a lady trying to figure out how to register it, she was arguing that such a gun with that kind of mechanism does not exist. My father got mad off and went to the police station, not gun in hand though, but in a portable case, where they could help. 2 police officers were amazed by the gun and asked to hold it. It was a wild day I couldn't believe. Not a teacher, but when I was in 3rd grade this dumb kid in my class decided to bring a live bat to class. The only problem, he put the bat in a plastic bag in his book bag and the bat died because it couldn't breathe. Him removing it from the plastic bag dead I still remember almost 26 years later. Oddly in my head, this is the most 90s crap I've seen on here. It was the early 90s actually lol. My classmate Will was a complete dumbass and somehow they wanted him to skip kindergarten. He was always doing stupid crap like that lol. I had a relative who was a biology professor at the college, and they let me take an actual human brain to show and tell. I was a legend after. Are you from Maryland? If so, I went to your school. If not, then you are not the only one to do this. Sadly no. Imagine how cool it would have been if I was from Maryland, haha. I'm not a teacher, but did bring a black widow spider once. I caught it in my backyard. My teacher kindly explained that it was not okay to bring venomous spiders to school, confiscated and released it. I brought a bat that I'd caught inside a glass mason jar. My teacher made me release it, and the little guy made a life for himself in the breezeway between the cafeteria and the main building. That's awesome. When I was in prep, so about 5, I bought a skeleton my dad used for study. It was a real skeleton. Back in the 60s/70s, when he was studying medicine, you could just buy a skeleton. He used it to learn the bones of the human body. Thing is, my dad must have bought it in because it was in a big box and I couldn't have done it myself. You can still buy them, but they are not cheap. I knew a dude who was a teacher of primary school age kids. They had a sink in their classroom that became clogged. I wonder what could be blocking the drain. He said out loud, "Bags of drugs," blurted out one of the kids. Turns out the girl's dad was a dealer who would hide bags of drugs in the drains under the sinks in their house. Well, somebody couldn't keep a secret. All you had to do was follow the damn drain, CJ. A lamb's tail. Apparently they went to a farm which let visitors keep them as souvenirs. Who knew that removing tails was a thing? Turns out it was a mistake to postpone show and tell for a couple of days while hidden in a locker. The tail marinated in the July heat. I brought a rattlesnake to school in a mason jar that my father killed directly by our front door. I was 6. Took to show my class. After the teacher let me show everyone and we discussed it, she stuck it in closet so we would all calm back down. Completely forgotten about, and we had a 3-day weekend. We had to have class in the gymnasium for 3 days. Wow, what a different look at snakes. Once the class next to me had a 2-inch snake crawl in. The class evacuated for the entire day. Another time, a snake was found on the football field, so we had to postpone a game that week. We have taboos regarding snakes. When I was in 5th grade and going to school in As, this girl in our class brought in a glass jar with a tarantula and a black widow. No clue how she caught both in one day or why. Within an hour the tarantula was dead and upside down in the jar. Same day there was a fire drill and yep, someone knocked it off her desk and the jar broke, releasing the black widow. We never found it, but the teacher made sure to stomp the dead tarantula just in case. Same thing happened with our glass fire ant farm in 2nd grade. Now that I think about it, I don't know why people kept bringing this crap into school or why our teachers let them. And now that I'm thinking about it, I brought a dead bat in a Ziploc that I found in my yard once. Again, no clue why. This is like the 3rd bat related comment in this thread. Insane. When I was in 6th grade I took a belly dancing bralette thing in that my brother sent me from his deployment. We were studying the Middle East and I had something from there. I thought it was cool. I remember my teacher gulping, eyes bulging, asking, "Just that? That's all they wear?" And me saying, "Yeah, I guess so." Anyways, it turns out he sent me his girlfriend's present and his girlfriend got my camel book. But I was very popular with the 6th grade boys for a little while. In my mind I imagine she's an early years teacher and is also popular with 6th grade boys courtesy of the camel book her boyfriend mailed her. Had a kid aged 6, 7 who had a lot going on, but part of it was that he was a compulsive liar with absolutely no sense of when a lie was so poorly constructed that everyone would know. Every single day he would say he had something for show and tell. Most days we didn't have time for his show and tell, but every so often we kind of had to let him have a go. He'd stand up, ready to do his show and tell, then wander over to my desk, browse for a minute, pick up the most random crap, a post-it note, a sharpener. Once it was the custom well done stamp that actually had my name on it, and then say some poorly constructed story about how he found it in Africa when he went there 40 yesterday with his auntie or some such. He'd get really upset if he realized nobody believed him, though even at that age, most of the kids had the tact or gullibility to just smile and nod. This sounds like he had a really hard home life. There was a fella I got to know after moving to a new city and school who lied like this, except he was in 9th grade. Claimed his dad was in the CIA and dropped him off via helicopter at school every so often. He actually walked to school every day. If you asked him about his home life he'd always say something like it's top secret info, can't talk about it. I eventually found out that his dad went AWOL after he was born and his mom died when he was in 3rd grade. Afterward, he got bounced around foster homes. He was genuinely a nice guy beneath it all, and he was naturally funny without the crazy lies. He never said anything mean about anyone or lied about anyone except his own self. I think he did it to make his own life appear better than what it actually was. Not bad, not normal, but extraordinarily awesome. He moved the next year, I presume, to another foster family. I can only hope he found legit happiness. I taught for a few years and a kid brought in a death note he had made, full of names and the way they would die. If you are not familiar with the series, check out the manga/anime synopsis. The student had my name in the death note too. Well, I'm glad to see you're still with us. Not for long they aren't. In 5th grade, we were studying human anatomy. When we got to the eyes, a kid brought in a bag full of cow's eyes. His dad worked in a slaughterhouse. Teacher was horrified. I should add that the teacher put them in the staff refrigerator for the day. This was in the Arizona heat. Afterwards, when teacher returned the bag of eyes to my classmate, he took them home, and on the walk home, gave them out to any kid who wanted one. I'll leave all that to your imagination. His haircut. He comes into my studio, I just got a haircut, then vigorously rubs and shakes his head as millions of fine hair bits rain down all over. Your studio? What? Yes, I teach kids art and music in a studio. My mom was a teacher. I didn't live with her, but I would occasionally go help her move stuff around, hang stuff up, clean, just help with her room. Occasionally, I'd bring a friend or two. We were in high school. My sister, 6, attended the school that our mother taught at. One day my mom called and asked if I'd come by with the 2 friends that I usually brought. We showed up about 20 minutes later. Without explaining, my mother sent us to my sister's classroom. We knocked, walked in, and my sister yelled my show and tell us here. These are my brothers. They are funny. I'm so lucky to be friends with these 2 guys to this day. Without hesitation, they started an age-appropriate Three Stooges routine. One climbed onto the other's shoulders. They juggled school supplies, pretended to trip each other, made funny noises. I barely played a role. My sister's class was continuous roar of laughter. Even the teacher was crying. She asked us to stop/leave because she didn't want kids passing out from laughing. I'll never forget my sister's little face, looking so proud, haha. Sorry for straying the prompt, but that's the only show until I can remember. You're a sweet brother, and she is a very lucky girl. Wasn't show and tell, but once during morning break, while I was a student teacher, 2 6-year-olds came to find the class teacher in the staff room. They had something to show her. She came back with pictures. These boys had found half a dead and decomposed hedgehog and decided to pick it up and put it on her desk. Needless to say, hands were thoroughly washed and drenched in sanitizer. I took a skeletonized animal from my backyard in for show and tell. I don't know what animal it originally was, and I think I kind of sneaked it past my mother. The teacher was a bit surprised. My cousin took a dead bat in a jar to school once. It was in the house. They hit it with a broom, which killed it. Then they put it in the jar. 1993, grade 3 primary school in Australia. My show and tell was rotten egg gas. I had a classmate hold a test tube that contained sulfur power while I added hydrochloric acid. No protective gear used. None of the adults saw any issue with this. It's Australia and it was still the early 90s. You probably could have made tear gas and not gotten in trouble. Meanwhile, pretty much everything can get you into trouble now in Australia. I taught 5th grade in a school with really rich kids and really low income kids bustin'. One of the low income kids brought a coconut for her show and tell about Trinidad, where her dad was from. She cracked it open, it was completely rotten inside and smelled awful. I was so worried about the kid being embarrassed, but then one of the rich kids, who was also of a pretty low intellect, looked at it with wide eyes and said it's like the earth, the core, the mantle and the crust, which is something I think he had never really understood before. So it actually turned out pretty well. This story turned out way more wholesome than I expected. Not a teacher, but there was a girl in my brother's year whose dad owned a junk/salvage place. Girl brings in an old thermometer. Okay, cool, whatever. She then goes, and then this is the most fun part, and proceeds to smash the thermometer on the desk and play with the mercury. IDK how that got resolved, but I do know that by the time I got to 1st grade, we no longer had show and tell. Playing with mercury is a lot of fun. You shouldn't do it, but it is. It's real pretty and moves in cool ways. I'm old. We didn't know better. As long as you didn't drink it, and you didn't have any paper cuts, the metallic stuff isn't that bad. It's still very bad and children shouldn't play with it. Organic mercury solutions will kill you and you won't even know it until you're in the middle of dying sometime later. You can play with gallium to basically the same effect though. Your hands are hot enough to melt it, and it's significantly less toxic. Pictures of him, his 2 older siblings, and his mom each holding his mother's full-term stillborn baby minutes after delivery. Shown to his 2nd grade classmates. Dude, a girl did pretty much the same thing in my 2nd or 3rd grade class. She also kept talking about how the dead baby was in their freezer at home while they made the burial arrangements. Wow. How did the hospital let them bring home a stillborn baby? In my case, it was so uncomfortable. Didn't want to shame him or make him feel like he'd done something wrong, but also immediately started imagining all the angry emails from parents regarding something that's sensitive being shared with 8-year-olds. A teacher once made me the subject of a show and tell. My parents, for reasons understood only by them, thought it'd be a great idea to get raw, still in the husked black walnuts by the bushel. Taking the husks off resulted in all of us getting our hands dyed a nice, deep walnut brown color. I guess it never occurred to anyone to wear gloves until it was too late. Ocelot, show the class your hands and tell them all why they look that way. So humiliating to walk around with what looked like dirty hands and black fingernails for a week. Not a teacher, but when my son was in preschool, he brought me in for show and tell a couple of months after brain surgery. I had a shaved head, gnarly scar, and a crazy eye. He made sure I showed everyone up close my crazy eye. It was funny to me and made me happy. He had a hard time seeing me like that in the beginning. AWW, that's so sweet. Healthy wishes. My dad had a great show and tell story. He caught a big gardener snake. It was about 3 feet long from his telling, and was telling all his friends at school about it. The teacher told him to stop lying, and he told her he wasn't lying. She then said fine, bring it in. My dad packed up this gardener snake in a big old jar, but broke it on the way to school. He walks into class with this big snake in his hands. The teacher freaks out, jumps on her desk, and is terrified of it. She sends him to the principal office. The principal was also a woman who wouldn't let him in cause he was holding a big gardener snake. The principal called his mother, who simply responded with, why did the teacher want him to bring it? And then he ended up getting the day off school and didn't get in any other trouble from it. Ugh, hate teachers like those. All arrogant like bring it in, assuming the kid is lying for no reason other than their own assumption and stupidity. Then they get mad when the kid was telling the truth all along. I'm trying to figure out why that would even be lie worthy. My husband and 7-year-old son are constantly catching and relocating them out of my garden area and back into the woods. It's not like they are rare or particularly hard to catch. I can easily see kids catching one for fun,